What would you do if you were stranded on an island where winter lasts 10 months, where your only companions were corpses and polar bears, and where rescue was never coming? In 1921, Ada Blackjack didn't have a choice. She was a seamstress, a mother, and the only woman on an expedition that went catastrophically wrong. This is the story of how she survived when everyone else died.
Ada Blackjack was born in 1898 in Alaska, part of the Inupiat people, an indigenous group that had survived in the Arctic for thousands of years. But Ada's life hadn't followed the traditional path. Orphaned young, she was raised in the Nome area and learned English in a Christian mission school. She married at 16, had 3 children, but tragedy followed her. 2 of her children died young. Her husband abandoned her. By 1921, she was a single mother struggling to survive in Nome with her 5-year-old son, Bennett, who was slowly dying from tuberculosis.
Ada, desperate. She needed money for Bennett's medical care. When she heard about an expedition looking for someone to cook and sew, she took the job. The pay was decent. The expedition leader, a Canadian explorer named Vilhjalmur Stefansson, promised it would only be 6 months. Ada didn't know much about Arctic exploration, but she knew how to sew skin clothing and cook. That was enough. She said goodbye to Bennett, left him in the care of others, and boarded a ship heading north.
The expedition's goal was to claim Wrangel Island for the British Empire. Wrangel Island sits in the Arctic Ocean, north of Siberia, one of the most remote and inhospitable places on Earth. The island is a flat, treeless expanse of frozen tundra, where winter temperatures plunge to 50 degrees below zero, and howling winds can strip flesh from bone. Stefansson believed the island could be colonized. He had tried before and failed. This time he sent 4 young men: Alan Crawford, Lorne Knight, Fred Maurer, and Milton Galley, and Ada.
From the beginning, Ada was an outsider. She was indigenous. She was a woman. She was there to serve the men, not to be treated as an equal. The men were confident, even arrogant. They believed they could live off the land, hunt polar bears and seals, and prove that the Arctic could be tamed. Ada stayed quiet, did her work, and tried not to think about how far she was from her son. The ship dropped them off in September 1921, with supplies meant to last 6 months. The plan was simple: survive the winter, claim the island, and wait for a relief ship in the summer. But nothing went according to plan. The first winter was brutal. The winds were relentless. The cold was crushing. The men tried to hunt, but game was scarce. Polar bears prowled the island, but killing one required skill and luck. Seals were few. Birds migrated away. By spring, their supplies were dangerously low. The summer of 1922 came and went. No relief ship arrived. They were alone.
As food dwindled, desperation set in. The men grew weak, irritable, and scared. By late 1922, it was clear they were in serious trouble. Lorne Knight developed scurvy, a disease caused by lack of vitamin C. His gums bled, his teeth loosened. He could barely walk. The others weren't much better off. Starvation was closing in. In January 1923, 3 of the men made a fateful decision. Crawford, Maurer, and Galley would walk across the frozen sea ice to Siberia to get help. It was a desperate gamble. The distance was over 100 miles across unstable ice in the dead of winter, but staying meant dying slowly. They left Ada behind with Lorne Knight, who was too sick to travel. They promised they'd send help. Then they walked into the white emptiness and were never seen alive again.
Ada was now alone with her dying man on an island in the middle of the Arctic winter. She had never hunted before. She had never been taught the survival skills her Inupiat ancestors passed down through generations. She was terrified, but she had no choice. If she didn't learn, she would die. At first, she tried to care for Knight. She fed him what little food remained. She read to him from the Bible. She tried to keep his spirits up. But Knight was dying, and both of them knew it. He grew weaker every day. His body was shutting down. Ada did what she could, but she was also struggling to keep herself alive.
She forced herself to learn how to set traps. She studied the way animals moved. She watched for seals at breathing holes in the ice. She shot birds when she could. Every kill was a small miracle. Every meal meant another day of life. She was clumsy at first, wasting ammunition, missing shots, but gradually, painfully, she improved. Hunger is a brutal teacher.
The island was not empty. Polar bears roamed constantly, drawn by the scent of humans and the remains of their camp. Ada was terrified of them. She had heard stories of bears tearing through tents, dragging people into the snow. At night, she lay awake, listening to the wind, unable to tell if the sounds outside were storms or predators. She kept her rifle close, though she barely knew how to use it. One day, a polar bear approached the camp. Ada saw it from a distance, a massive white shape moving toward her. Her hands shook as she raised the rifle. She fired. The bear didn't fall. It kept coming. She fired again. This time it stopped, wounded but not dead. It limped away. Ada didn't chase it. She was too afraid. But she had defended herself. That small victory gave her confidence. She could fight. She could survive.
Months passed. Winter gave way to a brief Arctic summer. Then winter returned. Knight's condition worsened. By June 1923, he was bedridden, delirious, barely conscious. Ada stayed by his side, reading to him, trying to offer comfort. On June 23, 1923, Lorne Knight died. Ada was now completely alone. She buried him as best she could, wrapping his body and placing it outside the shelter. There was no one to say prayers with her, no one to share her grief. She was the last human being on Wrangel Island.
The isolation was suffocating. Days blurred together. Ada kept a journal marking the passage of time, documenting her hunts, her fears, her hopes. She wrote about Bennett, wondering if she would ever see him again. She prayed, she cried, but she also kept moving. She couldn't give up. Her son was waiting for her. She improved her hunting. She killed seals, skinned them, used their blubber for fuel and their meat for food. She repaired the shelter when it started to fall apart. She rationed her ammunition carefully. She learned to read the weather, to predict storms, to move with the rhythms of the Arctic. She was no longer the frightened woman who had arrived 2 years earlier. She had become something else, a survivor.
On August 20th, 1923, a ship appeared on the horizon. Ada couldn't believe it. She thought she was hallucinating, but it was real. The ship was a rescue vessel, sent to check on the expedition after 2 years of silence. When the crew came ashore, they found Ada alive, thin and worn, but standing. They also found the bodies. Night buried near the camp, and later the frozen remains of Crawford, Maurer, and Galley were discovered on the ice. They had made it only a few miles before succumbing to the cold. Ada was the only survivor.
When she returned to civilization, Ada expected gratitude, recognition, perhaps even respect. Instead, she was met with skepticism and scorn. Newspapers questioned her story. Some accused her of cowardice, claiming she hadn't done enough to save the men. Others dismissed her survival as luck. The racist and sexist attitudes of the time refused to see an indigenous woman as a hero. The white male explorers were romanticized as tragic figures. Ada was treated as an afterthought.
Ada returned to her son, Bennett. She used the money from the expedition to get him treatment. He eventually recovered. Ada lived a quiet life after that, away from the spotlight. She lived until 1983, dying at the age of 85. Her name is finally being spoken with the respect it deserves. Ada Blackjack's story is not just about survival. It's about resilience, a mother's love, and the lengths she would go to save her child. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more incredible true stories of survival. Thanks for watching.